This video tutorial is on iView and fluid management for AINs. Fluid balance documentation will transition from paper to EMR. This will be done via iView in the intake and output band. Charts no longer in use will be the daily fluid balance, pediatric daily fluid balance, and fluid balance summary chart. Documentation of tubes, lines, and drains, of peripheral cannulas, urinary catheters, and enteral tubes for insertion will be done via iView in the adult observation band.
In this section of the video, we will cover how to document fluid balance via the intake and output band in iView. Please note that this demonstration is taking place in an EMR training domain using a fictional patient. We will firstly go through a brief overview of the iView intake and output band before entering some volumes into our chart. To access the intake and output band, you will need to locate iView from the left-hand EMR menu. Once located, select iView, and then you will need to find your intake and output band from the list of bands available to you. The intake and output is separated into separate sections. On the left, you will find the intake and output folder menus. The folder menus allow you to select headings from the list that will assist you to use the fluid balance chart on the right-hand side of the screen. As the selected item, for example oral, will be brought to the top of the fluid balance chart on the right, enabling you to enter volumes easily under that section of the chart. On the right-hand side of the chart, you will notice that the chart is separated into hourly time columns for nursing staff, that the chart is actually defaulted to a 72-hour view. So today is the 20th, but we can see the 19th, we can see the 20th, and we'll be able to see the 21st. You can default this chart to a one-day view, which may be easier in clinical practice to have access to the chart one-day view. To do so, you would need to right-click on the grey date and time heading and change to today's results. Once you do this, you will notice that the chart moves from right to left. We have on the right-hand side of the chart starting at midnight to 1 a.m. And if we move along the chart, you will see we move further through towards midnight tonight. We have a 12-hourly column, which is a summary column from the last 12 hours, so from midnight to 12 p.m. We have the same from 12 p.m. to midnight, another 12-hourly total column. And we also have a daily total or 24-hour total column and the clinical range total column. The clinical range total column will depend upon the time that you have set your page to. So if you change from a 72-hour view to a 24-hour view chart, then the clinical range total and the daily totals will actually be the same. The chart also has intake and output summaries and a total overall balance at the top of the chart. Now that we've done an overview of the chart layout, we will move through to documenting an orange juice that your patient has just finished for their morning tea. So as we said before, if we access our left-hand menu items and select the appropriate heading, which in this case is oral, that will bring oral to the top of our chart. Now, another useful piece of information would be to use the refresh icon. The refresh icon will ensure that the time that is now, which is 10:24, so we need the 10 till 11 column, will come to the front and the top of the chart. This will make it easier to enter information. We will enter 110 mils because the patient has just finished their 110 ml orange juice. You can write comments. You may be able to write what the patient actually had as input, so we can type in orange juice. Now those values will be in purple until we change and sign our values by using the sign icon at the top of the chart, which is denoted by a green tick. Once we select the tick, it will change our information to black, which indicates that the information has been saved. While we're entering information, also enter the patient's bowel volume, as they've just used the bedpan and had their bowels opened. So again, to move to that section of the chart, find our output folder and bowels underneath the folder. And now we can enter information into, into the right-hand side of the chart. In this occasion, we'll enter 50 mils because it was a measurable volume that we could ascertain. We will sign the information using our green tick sign icon to ensure the information is saved. At this point, I'd like to point out that there are a number of other fields under the heading of bowels which is available on the fluid balance chart, being stool volume, our Bristol stool form scale, and our stool assessment fields. These fields will automatically pull the information that has been entered under these fields if the patient has had a bowel chart entered in BTF. If these fields should not be populated in the intake and output band or fluid balance chart in iView, they should always be entered into the BTF fields in the bowel chart. If done, we'll pull through the information to here to give us a clearer picture on what is happening with the patient's bowels. Now we would like to enter information about our patient's urinary catheter output. So again, finding our output folder, finding urinary catheters heading, which will bring the urinary catheters to the top of the chart and allow us to enter the volume of drained this hour. We note that the patient has had 100 mils entered into drainage bag. So left clicking on the field, enter our 100 mils, finding our green tick, we will be able to sign the information off and ensure that information is saved. And this is how we can use information in our fluid intake and output chart. Ensuring we always refresh when we're finished. This will refresh our intake and output volumes, which you can see our volumes have been added to now, and our overall balance for the fluid balance chart. In this section of the video, we will cover where you can record observations for lines, tubes and drains in either the adult or pediatric observation bands within iView. Always ensure when you are documenting clinical care that you are working within your scope of practice. If working in the Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health District, segments that are endorsed for use will have the documentation type field, which allows documentation of insertion, shift observations, and removal. If working in South East Sydney Local Health District, all available segments can be used for documentation. In this scenario, we're going to locate the size 12 indwelling urinary catheter in iView to document a set of routine observations. Firstly, we would go to iView, which is located left-hand menu, to open up our bands. Here we can see we have our adult observation band. We also have our pediatric observation band. For the purpose of this scenario, we have an adult patient and we need to locate the size 12 urethral catheter. This will be located under tubes and drains. You can also see that there is information already documented under tubes and drains by the tick that is located next to the tubes and drains in your band. If we come across to tubes and drains, we can see we have our urinary catheters and we have an indwelling catheter, size 12 French urethral, ready for documentation. Now, to enter our observations, we locate the time. So this is the time we are going to enter our observations. So in this column commence our entries. Documentation type is the first field. So if you were working in the Illawarra Shoalhaven, you are able to document urinary catheters because you have the documentation type field available. When we double click, we can see that we can select shift observations as the entries that we want to make. This has narrowed down our selection now that we have shift observations, and these are the fields that we need to enter. So secured is our next selection. If we select yes, the system will automatically push us to the next selection in the list. So we have our drainage system. We know our patient has a free drainage bag in this scenario, so therefore we'll select free drainage. The system will move us down to the patent field. For the purpose of this scenario, I'm going to ask that we select because we will come back later in the scenario and modify that entry. Here we're going to look also at entering urine characteristics. This is a multi-select field, so you can enter as many from the drop-down fields as required um, to, to note your characteristics of your urine, but for the purposes of this scenario, we'll say that we have cloudy urine. We will select Enter, move to the next field. Now, urine specimen collected and sent is our next field. Before we answer this question, I'll just highlight that this field is actually highlighted blue, which is different to all of the other fields in this selection. And the reason for that is that it has information that's sitting behind or reference text that's sitting behind the field. To add the reference text, you can right click, view reference material, and it gives you an outline of when you would actually collect a urine specimen. We will select OK and go back to our shift observations. So we'll double click in this field again. We're not going to collect a urine specimen, so we will select No. The next field is indication for catheter still present. As an assistant in nursing, this is outside our scope to determine if the catheter is still required. So we will not enter information into this field. Instead, we will bypass the field, and we do that by just selecting Enter, and it will keep the little diamond, as you can see, in the field, and it will not be populated. Now, if you needed to write any comments about the catheter, you could do so here, just for the purposes of showing that it's a free text field. I'll write nil, and we will continue to sign off our information. At this point, I will just highlight that all of our information here is in purple, and that is because we haven't signed off our documentation. So to sign off our documentation, we move to the sign icon, which is a green tick. We select the green tick by left clicking on our mouse, and now you can see that our information is populated in black and signed off. Okay, to the next part of our scenario, you have noticed that you've accidentally selected No in the catheter patent field, and now you need to modify your entry. So to modify this result, we go and click over the result to highlight it, right click to get the drop down menu, click modify, change our entry to yes, because we do have a catheter that's patent. And now we move up again to move it from purple to black, sign it off. Excuse that alert in our training domain. And then we can see that now we have a yes in our field instead of no, so that the selection has been modified. And that's signified by a blue triangle sitting in the right-hand corner of the field. Now, if we wanted to see what was modified because we were a different clinician to the one who entered the information, we can simply right click and we can view result details. And here we can see the action was initially no at 3 minutes past 4, sorry, and that it's been changed. 1 minute later was changed to a selection of yes. So to close that, we select close. And now the next part of this scenario, I'd like to be able to show you how you can unchart information if you have put information into the incorrect patient's record. So in order to unchart information, which you can do multiple fields all at once, what we need to do is highlight all the fields that we want to unchart. So because we've done all of our observations in the wrong field, we need to select Shift and highlight, right click, select Unchart, and only selected that top field. So we will need to go, it didn't capture all of our selections. So selecting Shift again, getting rid of all the fields that we want to unchart. And now you can see it's pulled through all of the fields we want to change. We need to document a reason. So we're going to say we've charted this incorrectly on the wrong patient's chart. We're going to sign for that. And now the system will display all of those entries as in error. And there will be a comment associated with each of those entries, which will be denoted by the little black triangle, this time at the top of the cell. And if you hover over that, or if you view result details and go to the comments, you can see why these results were uncharted. It's because they were charted on the incorrect patient. Okay, if you needed to be able to document a result retrospectively, you would need to add another column to indicate the time the observation was actually attended. So in this scenario, we will try and enter observations that were placed at 3:30. So we don't have a 3:30 column. So in order to get that column available to us, you need to find a time column, right click, insert a time and date, or date and time, and we're going to replace the time of 7 minutes past 4 with 3:30 and press enter. And now the system will put that 3:30 in the where it belongs. And now we can enter our information or our shift observations under the time of 3:30. Okay, so last but not least, what I would like to show you before we leave this video tutorial is where you can locate information about what lines, tubes and drains the patient has in situ as a one-stop shop. So we'll go to our patient summary page. We will refresh our screen. And now you can see we have a section for documentation of lines, tubes and drains. So here we can tell our patient only has one tube, which is our indwelling catheter size 12. If the patient had other lines, tubes or drains, such as peripheral catheters or enteral tubes, then these would also, if they were a line that had active documentation against them, they would be located on the patient summary page in this section. This is a really good page to assist with an overall view of what's happening with your patient, and is a great place to come to assist with handing over clinical care from one shift to another for your patient. Thanks for listening to this video. If you have any further questions relating to documentation of observations in iView, please go to the local intranet page, find your EMR intranet site, and you will find contact details for your local EMR team. Thanks for listening.
Please scan the barcode to register that you have completed the iView and eFluids AIN tutorial. Thank you for watching.